Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to another episode of Melanin and Moonlight. I am one of your hosts, Tyrell Collins.
And I'm the other host, Vernon Scott. How are y'all doing? How are you, Tyrell?
Oh, I am doing good. I had a lot of like downtime actually this week. So even though it was a productive week, it was like a good like self-reflection week, I think, for me. So I feel good. I feel good
That's good.
whenever those kind of weeks can happen.
That's good.
What
I
about
was
you?
this my, my weekend actually just made the week for me. Got to see
Good.
some old friends. I was in Macon this weekend, so that was great. Haven't been there in a very, very long time. I think homecoming 2022. It's the last time I've been in the city. Other than that, I've just been driving through that hole. But it's been great. I've learned of a new game, and we'll talk about that game later in the episode because it has really one reminded me of how much of a gamer I am, and two, how much love I have for cozy games. So I can't wait to talk about that. So. Other than that, Tyrell, let's get this started. And what the hell is on your radar, good sir?
Oh, something that was so interesting was that I was having a conversation with a friend recently, and we were talking about aspects about like gender bias in media, right? And so I was watching something and it made me stop to take note about how much this actually plays out, especially in TV and movies. If you have ever like followed storylines, and we're talking about from like a heteronormative standpoint, of course. And when
Mhm.
I say this again, I love all, love all of our women, all of our female listeners. So please do not, come for me in the comments, y'all. I love y'all. However,
No, the strong,
why is
however,
it
you work.
always, however, as I say with a comma, why is it a lot of times in media, especially TV and film, that when it comes to relationships that are portrayed, no matter if it's drama, if it's comedy, or, anything like that, men are all walk through the fire, quote unquote, to like get the woman back after wrongdoing? And it doesn't matter what the scale of wrongdoing is, if it was like a simple misunderstanding, if it was something more serious as far as cheating, things like that go. However, I think the way that media portrays women a lot of times is that women can often apologize and just be forgiven. And I think that that's like a recurring pattern, in media and pop culture. So it's kind of like me and my friend, we got on this conversation about there's this trope about of course like gendered expectations in relationships, right, where men are expected to prove devotion, right, through grand gestures, and like women can like apologize more like their apologies are more readily accepted without like any of like additional, well, I'm not going to say additional, but like there's not like that emotional, kind of labor that's uh, you know, feel with it. And so we got to talking about like what are some reasons for that. And so I was thinking about, well, one, again, we've always, of course, as we know, we've always lived in a kind of obviously a gender biased society, of course, right?
Mhm.
So if we're, again, we're thinking about in terms of like heteronormative aspects where, men are expected to quote unquote earn a woman's love and forgiveness. And of course, because women in society, of course, are often viewed as emotionally superior or naturally nurturing, it means that their missteps are seen as less harmful or easily redeemable, in some types of, contexts. So and so when we got to talking, it was like I don't know, it wasn't a divisive conversation by no means, but it's just the fact that we live, obviously there's obviously a lot of things in society that, yes, privileged men, obviously we live in a patriarchal
Mhm.
society, of course, but of course, even as I was talking about like with my own mother and things like that, like she will be quick to bring up about of course, there are a lot of systems in place that work to a that work to a woman's advantage, and they will exploit that to use it. And so
Mhm.
just the whole nature with this whole media conversation, I got started thinking about like some examples of like when this has been like very obvious. So like if people think about, I'm just going to go through like a movie and TV show real quick, and maybe if other examples come to mind, I don't know, maybe I'll point them out. But like take for
Mhm.
instance like the classic show like Friends, right? So if anybody has seen Friends, right, you know the whole saga of the whole Ross and Rachel debacle, right? So it's kind of like there's an instance when Rachel like writes Ross a letter, right, expecting him to like take a full account of responsibility for their breakup, despite her role in the break in their situation that you want to call it, right? So it's almost like he struggles to meet her expectations and spends if you really were like a Friends fan, or if you just even tuned into Friends a little bit, spends like much of the series proving like his love for her. And even when she makes mistakes, like not telling him about her feelings before his wedding, right? She simply expresses like regret, and Ross like forgives her without without making her
What?
prove herself whatsoever. And
Oh,
so, that's just like
that's
a very
wild.
classic example, right? And even if I'm gonna, always black love here, I'm gonna put the movie, as much as I love my girl Taraji, right? As much as I love my girl Taraji P. Henson, the
Yeah.
buffoonery that she did with Think Like a Man, with her and Michael Ealy.
Ugh.
I'm just gonna put it out there. This is not to diss the film. This is
You
not to
gotta
diss the film. We love films called part of Black culture. But
you
again,
gotta remind me
everybody
on
is
this one
not.
because it's been
Yes,
such a long time since I've seen that movie.
exactly.
I
But like just to give inference, in just case nobody is familiar with the movie. So Think Like a Man ensemble cast, featuring obviously it was based off the nature of Steve Harvey's book Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man. So very much black cast, beautiful black cast. I mean, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So
Yes.
Taraji, stars as very high, CEO, successful woman, Lauren. She is that classic like what you would call alpha woman. So it's like because she's this CEO, she kind of looks down a bit on Michael Ealy's character, Dominic, for not being like wealthy. And even though she supports his dreams, it's like she breaks up with him when she learns like where he is like as far as financially. And so it's kind of like, even though this is made as a comedy, and you're laughing, of course, throughout all the, shenanigans that are happening with all of the couples, it's like he has to prove his worth by securing like a better career. So when he does do that, not in the same way towards the end of the film, showing that, yeah, he has ambition and, waiting, for like that acknowledgement of his value when he gets like this whole business plan and stuff like that together. She's like met, quote unquote, Morris Chestnut at the end of the movie, finds out, and, of course, Morris is hello. No said. But it's kind of like, when she realizes that Morris is not who she actually wants, when she realizes her mistake, she just shows up like 2 minutes at the end of the movie, right?
Mhm.
Apologizes and asks for another chance, right? Without really ever having to prove herself the way Dominic had to prove himself to her. So again, those are just like two very like simple like TV show and movie scenarios. And I can even think about other cases like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days with the whole Andy and Ben situation. I didn't really like follow it's been a while since I've seen the movie, but I kind of remember like Noah and Allie, for instance, and like The Notebook, as classic as like The Notebook is. Like I get it, she lost like having her memory loss, things like that. But the fact that she chooses Noah at like the last minute without ever really having to prove to no effort that like this man has been writing you 365 letters, really. And when you finally realize that you still love this man, like you do it in like the last minute, like sometimes I just can't. So I love love, y'all. I am a big rom-com fan. I am down for a good rom-com in a minute, but it is just something that I have, just consistently seen in media with TVs and movies, especially about the fact that, again, men typically have to be displayed as kind of like walking through fire to like earn, especially like, oh, the woman's love, and have this performative act of devotion. and women are just really granted forgiveness more easily. So I don't know, just what are your thoughts about like how that like this whole aspect is like portrayed in media?
I'm kind of mixed minds right now because one is like I don't know if we do things purposefully
Mhm.
in terms of is this a way of creating a fantasy that we don't know that really exists in
Mhm.
terms of in the patriarchal society where we know that it leans towards men's favor, we have to paint this beautiful male figure as being
Mhm.
somebody who's going to do all the work that's required, when in reality, whenever a man, let's say, doesn't do his part, let me rephrase this. Men could be very mediocre and be accepted. Men can be
Yeah,
very
yeah, feel like
mediocre in how they show up in relationships.
yeah,
So in a way, the fantasy is that now we're portraying the ideal man as being that person who's willing to go out and go through the trials and tribulations because that's not reflected in the reality that we live.
right.
So is that is one of the thoughts that's coming up for me. And the other thought is kind of like disrupting the norms a little bit. Like it's it does create this space where women are seen as being allowed back without accountability. That
Right.
that it is okay for you, like this, what you said about Ross and the old girl, whatever her name is.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
not a
that's
Friends watcher, but that I was like, wait, she wedding what?
yeah,
Like,
like, and here's the thing. I do want to put this on perspective. Y'all know there has always been the whole aspect of, friends lifting a lot of material from our classic show Living Single.
yes,
we are all Living Single, fans from, day
and
one.
is.
So but I just bring that up because like that, Friends is a much more like higher kind of white platform of a show, and depending on our listeners, things like that. So I just wanted to bring up that because like that's like a very like highly popularized TV sitcom couple.
That's fair because I was literally trying to find the equivalent in Living Single of that situation. Well, if anything, we can use Regine and her relationships, how she can just be like through with all these men and just easily be like, "Hey,
Well,
come back."
true, but I can also honestly think about as much as we love Sinclair and Overton, they kind of had a situation like that.
They
It wasn't to
did.
the degree of the scale because remember how Sinclair and Overton got together. She
Hmm.
didn't come to really recognize her feelings for him until the episode where he went out on the date with the
It
other
was someone
woman.
else.
And
Hmm.
so, yeah, even though it wasn't like, like Sinclair didn't like make a grand mistake or, like she wasn't like they weren't together. So I mean, like it's one of those classic, like, oh, okay, you really don't recognize or admit your feelings for someone until they get with some, like they get with someone else. So even though it was only like an episode thing, it can still be equated the same. It's like,
Hmm.
why does it take, the nature of getting to that point? Because we know from the very start of Living Single, Overton had been pining for Sinclair since day one.
Day one.
But it's not until that moment where he actually starts to connect with somebody else, even if it's nothing serious, but it's like, oh, it's like, okay, antennas, jealousy goes up. And then
Hmm.
now she's forced to admit these feelings. Again, as you say, a kind of accountability.
Yeah. So like I think with the way that it's framed in a lot of what we watch now, it does communicate that women just have to do the bare minimum, that you don't there's no space for them to admit where they may have harmed a partner, where they may have done
Mhm.
wrong to a partner. Now, not to say that does not exist, because I know, just based off of my encounters, that
Mhm.
it does exist, but it's also for those people who don't often separate fiction from their own realities and think that this is the way that things are
Yeah.
supposed to be. That's where the trouble starts to happen, where
Mhm.
they think, no, you're supposed to go above and beyond for me. You're supposed to do all these things in order to win me back. And if that God just so happens to not go above and beyond the way that she wanted him to,
Mhm.
and now he moves on to different endeavors, now we have the situations where y'all don't come for my neck, but now we have the situation of the bitter baby mama or the bitter woman
Yeah, it's true.
who's upset because how dare you find another man, or sorry, how dare you find another woman and I haven't found another man yet. Like,
Yeah.
what is
And I
going on? You were supposed to come back to me.
Exactly. And I think in all it what this conversation what it did was it really highlighted like I love watching like YouTube reaction videos and people react to like older media and even though like you may be reacting to something that was like in the 90s or even something that is of course up today because I mean it still happens today. What I
Hmm.
love is people are or will call out hypocrisy really quickly and be like, no matter if it's a woman critiquing another woman or a guy critiquing another guy, I think we have gotten to a place in society where, yeah, we still do live, obviously, in a very patriarchal society. Of course, I don't think that's ever
Hmm.
going to change. But I do like when people are very quick to point out like the hypocrisy of like their own gender and
Hmm.
it's kind of like, no, dude, like you messed up. Like, really, girl? Like, really, that's what we doing, like, so I just think that this conversation, what it did was it spurred the nature of thinking about moving forward, no matter what type of media we're talking about. I think that we need to do a better job in showcasing media that instead of having this kind of unequal emotional labor and how it kind
Hmm.
of reinforces, I think, sometimes problematic dynamics. And no, that's no matter what type of, of course, like relationship we're talking about, hetero, queer, whatever, making, when we showcase relationships where it makes one party feel really imbalanced when the other party has to go above and beyond to be accepted again or just to
Hmm.
kind of like prove a love. It's kind of feeding into like that romantic ideal of media that is not healthy, I think, a lot of times for either anybody to see, where the emotional labor is one-sided,
Hmm.
and like you say, people are not made to take accountability or to think about what do they have to contribute to the growth mindset or the mutual effort when it comes to these relationships because again I love my strong women, I love my strong black women, but let's just be honest, when we think about some of these movies and we think about some of these TV shows, Waiting to Exhale, if we think about one of well prime example I love to bring up, if
That's a good man,
anybody
Savannah.
and anybody who are fans of the 2000s movie with Morris Chestnut, Vivica A. Fox, Gabriel Union, and so many other people, Two Can Play That Game.
Mm.
Vivica Fox has gone on record to say that she turned down Two Can Play That Game 3 times because she hated the script. And the reason why she hated the script was because if you're going to write a movie about a battle of the sexes, her character, Shantae, was not likable. She was always winning in that movie. And she's like,
Mhm.
this is not a fun character. Like she didn't like the character of Shantae. So it's like you can't write a character to be like a protagonist of a film and dislike her.
Mm.
So I really love the fact that, now that we're getting some behind the scenes aspects or people, like stars who are interviewing now about, like what happened, for them to like get these roles and stuff. That was something that was completely new to me. I didn't know that until like a little some
Mm.
time ago that because I love the movie Two Can Play That Game and like to know that
Right.
she turned down that role 3 times and pretty much she wrote the script. Like a lot of what was in that script, like she actually rewrote, to actually make the film more balanced. So no matter, of course, we can still be like, really Shantae, like we really going through all this, like, in each of this movie. But yeah, but it's still when you like I said, when we think about, these kind of like iconic or, black films, it's like oh, like we love it because we love our black classics, but it's like oh, the problems that kind of come about, like or even when we talk about like things from like a family aspect, I love the fact that one of the most heated, debated topics in black film, kind of cinema, that's kind of getting reverberated. If you are fans of the movie Soul Food,
Mm.
a lot of times when people were younger, Vanessa Williams' character Terry was always made to be the villain, but now the
Hmm.
conversations in years have gone out like, no, the
She was not the
family was
villain.
the actual villain of the film. And
They
yeah,
pushed
even
her
though
out.
Vanessa Williams had her, trouble, it's kind of like when you think about the things that they allowed her to go through and allow her to do financial wise for that family, knowing what kind of strain it was put. It's like, no, what are we talking about? Like, what are we doing? So I'm just, I'm glad that we are in a space now where we're not bashing our classic TVs, we're not bashing our classic movies, but we are going back in, I think now because we're living in a different time and we're
Hmm.
going back and re-examining some things. And so I think that this whole conversation, gives weight to that. Like, not having one party to go through the fire or to be accepted again, like to have these grand gestures that are only coming from one person.
Yeah. Do you name two films that have come up in my therapy sessions with my clients? Two, not to complete that game. Waiting to Exhale and Soul Food, but
Okay.
specifically with the soul food thing. Now, this part wasn't actually it was discussed, but it is important for us to really think about, especially when it comes to us thinking about our own growth and how we've changed throughout lives, is revisiting those old classics to see the shift in our perspectives that we have now. Because at one point, Faith's family, not Faith's family, wasn't Vanessa Williams?
Oh, Carrie. Mhm.
Yeah, her character was like seen as the villain because it was normal for the family to treat somebody this way,
Yeah.
to take all the resources, to treat them badly, and then make them feel as though that they're the outsider because they're going against the grain of what the family
Mhm.
wants. And when you've done the work, when you've actually stepped outside of that and live life a little bit, and you go back to that, you align with her character because you recognize, oh, this wasn't a healthy dynamic. This was not a good place. They were taking advantage of her, right? But it's also thinking, oh, this was a normal there. We're in a new, different type of normal. And we, damn, I forgot where I was going with that. Fuck you, ADHD.
No,
But
it's cool.
like,
But like you were saying, just the nature I think about like accountability, because I think
hmm.
another classic film like that is the Best Man series. Like the fact, like
Yes.
I love the Best Man series, but let's be honest, like the whole conversations around like who was more wrong, Lance, Mia, or Harper. Like that's going to be a reverberated conversation that always gets had, but then it's kind of like we can't have the conversation given what happened to Monica Calhoun's character. And it's
Hmm.
like I love the emotional depth of the second movie. However, it's kind of like as a fan though, it's kind of like if we think about like realistic in real life, it's like okay, Mia was never made to take accountability for what she did.
Mm-mm.
And no matter who you felt was more wrong or whatever, it's like, yeah, it's a dress, but it's like, all right, come on now. We gotta do better.
Yes. Yes.
So
Whew.
yeah. But yeah, so yeah, that's just a fun conversation, and I think it again it shows that the progress that we have made, and like I say, I love watching reactors react to like classic film and TV shows and things like that because it spurs great conversation, and things that were made in a particular time, like you can enjoy them for what they are, and and I think that that's just is a depending on our viewership point because like I know like a very tricky area for me has always been about comedy. Not all things I can find certain things like my classic like TV show sitcoms, no matter how much I watch the same episodes, listen to the same jokes, they always hit. They are always a riot and I'm laughing. Then there are certain things that I have like grown out of, like I don't particularly find funny anymore.
Hmm.
So comedy is always like a genre that's kind of like hit and miss with me. But it's just, I think that this whole conversation is just steering around like, okay, as we continue to grow and evolve in media, how do we make sure that we're having a balance of stories, that are being told? So,
Ooh, something I want to add to that is something that came up recently, and that's how, especially when it comes to comedy, how that laugh track forced people not to see the realness in a situation. And specifically, the example that was used was Boy Meets World and the
oh,
framing of a lot of the conversations that they had, and just realizing if you take away the laugh track and really pay attention to the real lived experiences of these characters, that they are going through some deep things that we don't take into account solely because we're focusing on that laugh track. Like the fact that Corey Matthews and his entire family were just trash. They were not the kindest of people. They were not supportive of each other. And even because that specific video was talking about how Corey Matthews looked down on Sean. And I was like, no, no way. And they brought up an example and they included the laugh track, but because it was out of context in a way,
Mm,
I didn't get the build up to that the funny moment, right? So I was like, wait, he really just called his friend trailer trash.
mm,
Wow. And we hide that with the laugh track. Okay. This is not good. So,
mm,
just even thinking about how our perceptions are twisted on these things,
mm.
I want to encourage people, especially if you were able to experience these shows when they were on air, to revisit them and see what comes up for you, and what's the new takeaways that you have from those episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love it.
But anyways.
And so, what is something that has been on your mind?
Oh yeah, let's jump into this Keto Rose situation, this
Right.
tonight's conversation. So just a trigger warning for anyone who has not heard of any of the things. There's probably going to be some mentioning of physical abuse, sexual abuse, as well as financial abuse going on here because this stuff gets deep. So if you're not familiar with tonight's conversation, it started off as a card game. Actually, I think it started off as a podcast, and then he incorporated the card game. I forget whichever one came first.
Mhm,
But the card game was essentially asking probing questions with you and your friend group to really get conversation started. So they went on tour having these conversations, and this was started by Ace. I forget his official government name, but if you search tonight's conversation, that man, black male who comes up. That's Ace. So, Keita Rose was one of the people who were on tour with him for I think the last 5 years, 4 years, one of those. So there has been recent separations that were occurring through their podcast. Now, I was not a faithful listener of the podcast, but I did enjoy the snippets of the conversation that I saw on TikTok because they're either encouraging women to make better decisions about the men that they're dating and also highlighting some of the flaws that some men may have to help men be better partners and all of that. So it was great way of having these discussions. And I was like, oh, I love this. It's really great. But we don't always know what's going on behind the scenes. Like Tyrell and I, we got beef, y'all. Stop. But for real, you never know what is really going on behind the scenes. And Keita is not the only person that has left tonight's conversation over the years, but recently there was like two main people, contributors that people really enjoyed, who left, and Keita being one of them. I forgot the dude's name, but he usually have some great replies too. But anyways. So Keita was just being upfront and honest about what's going on for her. She came online to the TikTok space, using coded language, and referred to Ace as Mojo Jojo. So just so that she can, start venting and really let people know what's going on. And she's alleged financial abuse in terms that he's been keeping her out of some of the money that she's earned over the years, especially when it comes to the merchandise that she's purchased out of her own pocket, where he was supposed to resell. Um, as well as some paychecks from some of the tours that they've done. So that part I was like, okay, that's just it. She's just trying to get her coin. I'm all here for it. Like, do right by our queen. But it continued. It got darker and darker, because it actually ended up revealing that Ace is someone who may be a narcissist. And I only say maybe because I'm not his therapist and I'm not diagnosing anybody. I don't know him intimately enough to make a secured diagnosis on him, but he does seem to be. There are traits that are there that may align with him having narcissistic tendencies and may being a narcissist. Just putting it out there. So, in having those conversations, she's revealed that um, there may have been former partners of his that he may have abused physically. She also mentioned how he himself has been sexually abused as a child and how he's still um, somewhat involved with that mentor that he had prior to the formulation of tonight's conversation. And through her really trying to advocate for herself, she's now stepped into a position where she's advocating for it. And it's weird to say it this way, but it makes sense where she's advocating for Ace and his well-being, as well as for any child that may still be impacted by um that mentor of his, to make sure that the church that Ace comes from is aware that this is going on, as well as to ensure that there's some proper security that's going around these people. And she's even been contacted by some of his former partners who like came to her like, this is my story, this is what I've experienced. So it
Yeah.
that one crash out really developed and became something beyond what I even thought was even possible or what I even thought was happening here. So it's just been interesting to see all that has been developing in her, not only just originally advocating for herself, but becoming somebody who is advocating for the well-being of other people. So I wanted
Definitely.
to, one, bring that up to acknowledge the work that Keita Rose has done for herself, as well as in this process of standing up for others. So congrats to the Queen for that. Uh, ooh, I'm sorry, I just got a text message that just shook me. But also to highlight the importance of just what she has was able to unfold and reveal um in all of this mess. So that's what I wanted to bring up. And yeah,
Yeah.
any thoughts, anything?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very interesting thing that brings up like I think several important points. I think when it comes to one just workplace ethics. Um of course as we were talking earlier about gender dynamics in media and just um I think the responsibility also of like platform owners because like I wasn't like all the way familiar with the situation but I do know Keita Rose and I follow some of the tonight's conversations podcasts because I really like their platform and things like that. And so I think that of course when it comes to of course allegations of like fatphobic comments or, favoritism and financial unfairness. Of course, that's always a recurring issue that happens in media spaces, especially for our Black queens, especially for our Black
Hmm.
women, often face undue, scrutiny and, kind of inequitable treatment, right? And so, um, for Ace, again, we don't necessarily, obviously, we have not had a front row view to like his behavior or like things like that, so we can only speak from outside aspects. However, obviously if this is indeed true or the extent of the allegations are true, I think it suggests like that is there's still that disconnect between when you're in a workplace and you have that disconnect between like leadership and like staff, or
Hmm.
like whoever is, facilitating like your platform. And of course that gets into like these often, again, as we talk about imbalances when it comes to power dynamics that prevent, the platform what it's supposed to be, continued open conversation and, just things like that. And so I think the way that, aspects like this get played out in the public is always kind of like a double-edged sword, because you want to, support and uplift, the person who has been done wrong. But again, because of the fact you haven't had a front row seat to it, unless you have that insider, point of view, it's like, okay, but, you know, what do I really say? Kind of like, what do I really say to this, other than obviously, if the extent of it is true, it's, completely wrong.
Mhm.
But yeah, I just think in a bigger, kind of wider picture, it opens up really like a conversation about how do we take accountability in Black media spaces. One of the things that from this situation that I would love to point out is I was talking to somebody earlier about how people were talking online about Kiki Palmer's podcast and giving her praise about a quick situation that happened with her and Usher when he came. And now I do want to have this little shameless plug. I think that Usher and Kiki Palmer have like a very like uh uncomfortable kind of chemistry between them that I kind of like. Like I don't like see like anything. One, obviously he's a married man. She has been that age thing, all those kind of things. But hey, we all consenting adults. However, I would not be surprised like if somewhere down the line like something was to manifest. I'm just putting that shameless plug in there. But anyway,
That's okay.
while she had Usher on her podcast, she went through like this rapid fire questions, with him, like she does with a lot of her guests. But one of the questions that was asked to him, you could see made him like visibly uncomfortable, and people were commending her because they were like, Kiki is she's such a vibrant personality, and she
Mhm.
knows how to read a room. So I think the question that she asked him was like when did he have like his first kiss, or like who was his first kiss or something like that. And immediately he had this thing about like, are we talking like legal or illegal? Because the whole thing with the whole Diddy stuff, that has, of course plagued itself in the media, things like that. We all, if you're familiar with Usher's history, you know that he was very much associated in in the industry at a very young age. So I am probably sure he has had obviously some aspects of inappropriateness that has been done to him, no matter if he like recognizes that or not. However, what people were commending Kiki for was that, she thought that these would be like little simple, like little, questions. And when she could see where he got visibly uncomfortable, she immediately switched to like the next question. She was like, oh, okay, well, like that's out. Like, okay, so what's like, what has been like your favorite song? So people were just really just commending her in that moment, because for her to be, of course, the brilliant Black woman that she is, and to have like a mega star like somebody like Usher, who's culture, who's fam, on her podcast, so they had to go through the whole thing about, as Kiki's relationship broke up and all that type things because of what was added on to the whole Usher situation at his Vegas residency show and all that type stuff.
Mhm.
But what was being commended with her was that as a person as a young Black woman who has this platform, she knows how to use her response. She knows how to use her platform in a responsible way. So going back to this situation with Keita Rose and things like that, I think it takes on this conversation about in what ways are we accountable, in our Black media spaces, right? So it's the responsibility of our creators that in leadership when building these platforms and building these brands that especially for a brand like that that profits off of giving advice on relationships and
Mm.
personal growth, that there has to be a reminder that transparency, fairness, ethical leadership, and all these things are very much important when you have a platform that is meant to uplift and educate their audience. So there's just I think that in all of, there's a bigger conversation to be had about what does accountability look like in our Black media spaces.
Oh, I 100% agree. Like, this is actually something that I'll be thinking about very often, especially when it comes to, like, we have access to so much information, and just don't think I'm on the side of censorship because I'm not, but I am on the side of responsible media. I am
Mhm.
on the side of ensuring that the information that you're taking in is either fact-based, is reputable, or it is something like if you're going to guise it as something that works for you, that you communicate that this is something that benefits you and it's not going to benefit everybody.
Exactly.
And I think that's an issue where we tend to fall. Like, personally, as a actual therapist, I don't think therapy works for everybody. You have to be open to therapy for therapy to work. It has the capability to work for all, but it's not going to work for all unless you're willing. So, in saying that, we do need spaces for people to, one, invite those people who have the answers if you don't have the answer, or invite people who can help you see this different perspective in an educated and informative way that's not saying this is how you have to live your life or saying that this is what you need to do. Like, even when it comes to like the book that I wrote, right? I don't tell people this is what you need to do. I provide so many suggestions on things that may work, what may not work, but for other people to make the decision for themselves of how they want to live their lives. And we live in a space where a lot of the media that we consume tells us that this is how we are supposed to live our lives, rather than giving us the permission to step out and explore it and do it the way that we need to do it or how
Exactly.
we may want to do it. And I will say that's some of the flaws that I did see in tonight's conversation because um, in how they relate some of their advice that they were giving to people. But at the same time, because I only see the clips, I don't know how much information that they provide people
Mhm.
before they give this response. But I always had a thought in my head is how much of this is projection and how much is this is you being genuine and giving somebody the advice that suits their specific situation. And with sharing it on social media, those who are receiving this also being aware that this may suit that individual, this may
Mhm.
not suit my position or my
Right.
situation.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, it's yeah. I think just it's kind of like you have to have a platform where you practice what you preach. you
Yeah,
know
yeah.
and we just have to have more conversations about what does responsible media look like, because again,
Hmm.
you like you said earlier, this is not about censorship. You can say whatever the hell you want to. However, just recognize, by you having a public platform, it also gives license for people to react any kind of way that they want to, and we do that in
Hmm.
everyday life anyway. So you like you say, we just have to have more conversations about what does it mean to have unfiltered conversations, but also what does accountability look like, what does having a responsible platform.
Yeah, yeah. Um, that's definitely where a lot of us tend to fail though, because I think it's about the am I doing this for the money or am I doing this for the right reasons? And unfortunately, a lot of us is doing it for the money, which I understand. It's all good. But
Yeah.
I would love if we did a lot more things just for the sake of being responsible.
Yeah. and,
Um,
and you like you say, and this is gonna keep and unfortunately, like, but it's like it's unfortunate that things like this happen, but I think that when things like this happen, it forces us to have uh needed conversations, because like when it
mhm,
comes to digital content creation, yeah, we need to be having conversations about what does fair contracts look like, what does transparency look like, what does, when it's kind of like you can talk about what a safe space mean, what a safe space is, but it's like, okay, you can't just declare that your set or your workplace is safe, but what does that actually look like, because the ways in which we envision safe spaces is different,
mhm.
you know. So it's like when we talk about these, when things like this happen, it's unfortunate because, you don't want this, to be happening in any regard, but it does force the nature of very needed conversations that have to happen.
Yes. Ooh, and you mentioned safe space. We definitely gonna have to have a conversation about that and what those look like. Because I've been meaning to do that, like at least on my Instagram, but I've been failing my Instagram for a while. So another conversation for another day, of course, but definitely have to bring that back.
Absolutely.
Did you have anything that you want to bring up about the NAACP Awards before I jump
Yeah.
into Hello Kitty?
So Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. So I just wanted to highlight the fact again, if we have not said Happy Black History Month to everybody,
Oh
even
yes,
though we're at the
yes.
end of the month. But it's kind of like we celebrate Black History all year round, so it's not just a month. But definitely have Black History Month to everybody.
Hmm.
But yeah, I just wanted to highlight, of course, the NAACP Image Awards 2025 came on this weekend, and it was actually a really nice show. Dion Cole, comedian Dion Cole, actor, Dion Cole hosted it. Um,
Fine.
I do love the fact that he opened with the joke with a this is how you can really tell when comedians are really in their bag. Like for something that devastatingly that happened with the California fires, right? Again, very much a travesty. But like when you have a comedian like Dion Cole, he doesn't make a joke, of course, about tragedy, but the things that got highlighted associated with tragedy. So one of the things I loved about what he did in opening the show was that he was like, I can't believe like media and stuff was trying to blame like the fires on like us as black people, like talking about like DEI, right? And like I love like the joke that he says that now y'all know as black people we don't mess with fire like that. like
Mm-mm.
like he says, the only thing you see black people have as fire is a fire stick. So it's like hello, like so I love like that is when people are in their comedy bag, where you're not necessarily making fun of like a tragedy, but something that got associated with the tragedy. Because when you think about the ignorance and the lunacy about okay, well, how are we blaming fire, natural disasters on DEI? I don't know how that connotes. I don't know, but yeah, it was a really just really nice award show. Speaking of the nature of the California fires, I do love how, of course, Morris Chestnut, being a California resident, he led a speech and a prayer for peoples whose lives were affected, and things like that. He did have some people who lived a short distance in like the Altadena area come on stage. Lettucey, All Snaps performed the tribute to Not Lost is the spirit of our community. Of course, I don't need to say more. Miss Lettucey always, tears up a stage. Now, I will say the one thing that I did squint my eye at during the not the nature of the tribute, but when it was doing the interviews, which is something I think for a further conversation. And I cannot remember who was the guy that said this, but he was in a limo at a certain part of the clip as they were doing the pan footage of the fires. And he goes on, he says something that I just thought was just very inappropriate. He said, and again, I cannot think about who this gentleman's name is because the clip, because it was like it was like a literally 3-second clip. Like if you didn't really weren't really listening, you would have missed it. But he said something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, this was way worse than Hurricane Katrina." And as I'm watching the award show, I had my head down, and maybe that's because like I was doing something at the time, but I heard that, and I looked up at my TV, and I'm like, why would somebody say something like that? Like, why are we comparing natural disasters that have affected all people's lives? I don't care if 2 people were killed versus 2 million people were killed. Like, you do not compare tragedy like that. Like to
Yeah.
say like the California fires was way worse than Hurricane Katrina. Where did Hurricane Katrina come up? Like the connotation, and the fact that I'm like, okay, come on, black brother, let's not do that. Let's not compare
Mm-mm.
tragedies here. So again, that's the only thing that, kind of had me a little bit like side note. But yeah, the award show was really great. Some really great people of course got recognized. Speaking as we talked about Kiki Palmer earlier, she ended the show of the night taking home the Entertainer of the Year award.
Oh.
I was so glad for my girl Kiki. I love her. But just the uh the nature of giving the chairman's award to, of course, Miss Kamala Harris. She, of course, brought the house down with, again, always epic speeches that, she gives. Dave Chappelle got the President's Award for his, work in comedy and all the things that he's done. The Wayans family getting inducted to the NAACP Image Hall of Fame award. Long overdue. Let's have some snaps. Long overdue for that. Unfortunately, Keenan was not able to be there. I'm really hoping that he's okay. Nothing's going on with him, like he's ill or anything. But Damon and Marlon did a wonderful job just going through the trajectory of the history about how their family really got started in the business, and that all stemmed from Keenan. So of course, thinking about everything that they have done just as a family, I would have liked because Damon and Marlon are such like in the spotlight a lot. I would have
Mm.
liked if like Kim would have been the one to like deliver the story because of the fact we don't get as much from her as we once did. So I kind of would have liked her to have done the speech, but that's just me. That's just a personal me thing. Um, but yeah, just other people that were just highlighted. Kerry Washington, of course, won for outstanding, actress in a picture for six triple eight. Fantastic story on Netflix. That story was definitely something that needed to be told. The cast won for like motion picture as well. Kerry Washington had like such a great moment on stage where she was like, obviously she didn't expect to win or anything like that. She ended up almost delivering the same speech twice on stage, and having to have this moment where it's like, okay, get off the stage, because it's like she really up there just really like tripping. But I loved how people were taking it in stride because it was funny. So yeah, she was just having a moment on stage where it's like, Carrie, get off the stage. Just like get off the stage. But yeah, so many other people that one, congratulations to Michael Rainey Jr., who plays Tariq in Power. He's been nominated, and officially, since Power has ended, this actually makes his first award, for the NAACP. So, congrats to him. Um, and yeah, just a lot of other people who were recognized from the Malcolm Washington from the piano lesson just for creativeness, things like that. So many other people that did not get a chance to get recognized. And I feel, I'm not necessarily the most major fan of award shows, but I love award shows that are about us and for us as people of color because no matter who is nominated in these categories, like Queen Latifah won for, drama, actress. But I mean, think about who you had in that category. You had Zoe Saldana, you had Angela Bassett, you had who else was in that category? I can't think right now. But you just had a lot of, other people that were just really talented people. So when it comes to uh just talent across the board, it's like it's hard to pick not hard to pick a winner because anybody who wins, it's a win for the entire community. Of course, as
Mm.
always. But yeah, I just thought it was a really just nice, kind of simplistic yet, for the culture, just award show. And I've always thought that like, BET has always been like a little up in the air for me, when it comes to the award shows. But I've always loved like the NAACP awards, the Griot awards, and just award shows that really celebrate the culture and really celebrate, our blackness. Oh yeah, Shanola Hampton from my show Found. Like again, another outstanding actress who was nominated in that category.
Hmm.
So I just really enjoy the nature of when we televise and we have award shows that really just showcase our brilliance. And I think that with this year's nominees and performances from all different types of cinema and TV shows, like no two shows or no two movies you can say that were nominated that like, okay, yeah, this is kind of like the same thing just with a different person. Like all of like our black creativity was being like highlight, was not going to say all, but a spectrum of our black creativity was being highlighted and showcased. So I'm sad that when it comes to award shows that you don't have enough time to highlight, of course, everybody, because of course they got to fit everything within like a 2 hour airtime, plus with all the nature of the commercials that they got to pay for. So you had a lot of people that were not recognized, which is a shame. But just a really great night for Black culture.
See, what you told me is that I need to go back and start watching these award shows for real, because I did not even think about any of the ones this month for one. And as a result of that, I just completely blanked out on the fact that the
No, but you know
NAACP
what? It's
awards were going on too.
understandable. But it's understandable though, because when we watch these award shows, we get tired of just hearing like the same thing over and over again. And
Hmm.
I think that that's why, like, okay, I understand BET, Black Entertainment, Black Culture. BET is actually celebrating 45 years of onward movement. And immediately when they announced that though, one thing that kind of went through my head, I was like, yeah, so where did we go wrong? Like,
And when they got rid of 106 and Park.
like I can't, so it's just like I can't. But I do love, of course, I love as a black man, of course, I love
Hmm.
celebrating black culture. So, and that's why I do purposely I will still always tune into like the award shows, even the ones that I don't want to watch, because of course it's always gonna be something that people are going to be talking about in the media and stuff. And when you haven't seen nothing, you just get tired of hearing people talk about this or talk about that.
Fair.
And sometimes I feel like, well, definitely BET is definitely more like in the media than the NAACP awards, of course. But I will always, make sure I tune in either live or, a lot of times I let award shows tape so that way I can fast forward through. But it's just really one of those things like the Griot Awards, NAACP. That's really where you're honing in on the greatness, of a lot of talent.
Well, I'll make sure we'll come back to the awards conversation at a later date there, so I keep it on my radar. Vernon, make sure you tune in on that day. All right. So last thing I want to bring up is good old Hello Kitty Island Adventures. Somehow, like I made one little post on IG, and I do share my IG with my Facebook feed, and anybody else is like, "Why are you still using IG?" Blah blah blah. Leave me alone. I'm an adult. You'll be all right. Somehow I ended up getting added into a group of
Mhm.
other people who are playing this game. And first, I'm like, how did this find me? I don't know if it was the AI. I don't know if the people that's in that group are all real black people, whatever. I'm just engaged to be engaged at this point. But yeah. So I downloaded the game on Friday, spent 8 hours playing it Friday night. And I am not ashamed because I had a good time. I was playing it yesterday, and after this recorded, I will be playing it tonight. Okay, I am enjoying this game, and a lot of it is for anybody who's ever played like cozy games. Cozy games include what is it? Animal Crossing is one of those. Another one is this other game that I have that I need to really go back to called Spiritfarer. That was really good. But these games are just, they're not focused on winning per se, but
Mhm.
it's all about just enjoying the experience of playing it. You get to take a step outside of your reality and just have a fun time.
Oh,
if that's
definitely.
being cussed out by Tom Nook because he invited you to this island and now he's forcing you to pay him back for a tent that he gave you that he said was free and all the upgrades cost thousands and millions of dollars. It is what it is. You can be on that or you can be on any of these other games where you just having a venture away from life and just relaxing. And this game has just been a nice little relaxation for me. It's fun, it's cute. They have these little um creatures in there called the Gudentamas, and they are you have to go around the island taking pictures of them, and they just be in these random looking positions, and it's very interesting. So if you enjoy cozy games, not that Nintendo is sponsoring this episode now, if they happen to want to, feel free. Uh, we will
Look, we can
accept the
always use that.
funds.
Look, we can always use that sponsorship.
Okay. But it is a nice little carefree game, and it's really been bringing me joy. So I
Oh,
will point that out as a nice little thing for people to take advantage of if they happen to have a Nintendo Switch. So just wanted to have that little promo out
absolutely.
there. Nice little way to cap up this conversation that we've been having today. Any
Absolutely.
feels, any games for you, Tyrell? Anything at all?
Mm-mm. Not them kind of games. I gotta, when we gotta live in the in real world where people be playing all kinds of games, it's like,
I'm so done.
look, it's like, listen, I need to do what your shirt says right now. Protect my peace.
Amen. Amen. And I need to get a new one, but when I tell you people just be walking up to me like, "Oh, I love your jacket. I love that. Oh, I feel the same way. I need to start protecting my peace." I was like, "You can start by doing that right now."
Yeah, and you can
Or you
protect
could,
your peace by like backing up off of me for like,
right.
like don't get too close.
Don't get too close because I was protecting my peace and you decided to walk over here and you kind of disrupted it a little bit. You could,
Exactly. And people ain't aware of that a lot of times. Like, like back up. Like you don't need to be like up on people. Like you interrupting my energetic flow.
right. You could just be at a distance like, "Oh, I love your jacket," and keep on moving. And I say, "Thank you," and keep on moving. Any last words from you?
Not nothing from me. Just always for our wonderful, wonderful fans. Just thank you so much for tuning in, listening to us, as always.
Yes, thank y'all so much for listening to this podcast. And I guess we'll be seeing y'all next week. So y'all take care of yourselves.
Bye.
Bye.